What is up, beautiful people? It is your girl Rashima here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to yet another video on my channel, Naturally Speechy. So as you can tell by the title of today's video, I want to talk to you guys about something that I feel is plaguing my generation, which is what I call the quarter life crisis. For those of you who don't know how old I am, I will not say a number just yet, but I am a part of the millennial age group. So if you're watching this video, you either know or believe that the quarter life crisis is a real thing, or you have already experienced the quarter life crisis, right? So on the contrary, some people don't even know what a quarter life crisis is. It's almost comparable to what we would call a midlife crisis, and I actually wrote down what Google says midlife crisis really is, so let me read that to you. I have my notes. So a midlife crisis is an emotional crisis of identity and self-confidence that occurs in early middle age, which is similar to the quarter life crisis because the quarter life crisis just happens at a earlier stage in life, hence quarter life. Who would have knew? So just as a disclaimer,
these are only my own opinions on what I believe a quarter life crisis is and how my experience was with my particular quarter life crisis.
If the information that I'm disclosing here today does not suit what you believe a quarter life crisis to be, just do some thinking and do some research for yourself, right? Let's get right into it. As a millennial, I believe that we experience a quarter life crisis at a much noticeable rate than those of the people in the previous generations, like our parents and our grandparents. I don't think the quarter life crisis was such a big deal back then, as much as it is for us millennials and the Gen Xers and everybody that came after us. What we have to deal with are not only the expectations that come from our parents, you know, that they're our first teachers, so they expect us to behave a certain way, do certain things, but we also have expectations that we set for ourselves. At least I do. Like, I don't know if you guys have expectations of what you want out of your life, but I do. So we have our parents' expectations, we have our own expectations, we have the expectations that are set out for us by society, and what's the norm around us. But as millennials and Gen Xers and everybody else who comes under that umbrella after the millennial period, I feel like we also have the added expectation of what social media says we should have or how we should live or something like that. But that's a totally different rabbit hole. I won't get into that. But for the sake of this video, I want to just talk to you guys about my particular quarter life crisis. I'm not necessarily out of the window of having a quarter life crisis because I am still in my 20s, which means that my existential crisis is still occurring as I try to tackle adulthood. I want to just break down my 20s for you guys, but I want to like reverse my memory to go all the way back to my 20th birthday. I wouldn't say that I was carefree. I actually feel like my early 20s was a time of transition, like it is for all people trying to transition into adulthood. When I was 20, that was about 6 years ago. That was actually in 2013. I actually was back home in St. Lucie County. I was living with my mom and I was attending a state college. I would say that I had a lot of faith and I had a lot of determination. Like, what that determination was for, I could not tell you, but I was hungry for a better life because I was kind of living in a very toxic situation, like back home with my mother. We didn't have a good relationship back then, and she may see this and say, well, I didn't know that. Well, I'm telling you now, Mom. Sorry, I'm telling you now. We didn't have a good relationship back when I was 20. I just felt like it was a very toxic environment that I had to leave from, right? But I was full of faith and I was willing to do the work that it took to better my life. Those steps included becoming a first generation college student, which led to me graduating and moving the following year. So I graduated with my AA degree in 2013, which is when I was 20. So right around the corner was 21, right? So by the time I was 21, I had moved to a new city. I had gotten my first place. I was learning how to manage money on my own, like large sums of money, because I was receiving like financial aid and all that kind of stuff. Like, I was like, okay, I'm willing to take on some debt so that I can change my lifestyle. All these great things were coming my way, but I was still like in the teeter-totter of trying to figure out what kind of adult I wanted to be. Like, I was so faith driven when I was when I was young. I'm not saying that I'm any less faith driven now. I just feel like I was so green to the real world that all I had was my faith, and that literally carried me wherever I needed to go back then, right? And it still does now. I was so like into my routine of religion and church and all that kind of stuff. I really had to seek out God for myself. Like, it wasn't like somebody would come and pick me up for church, or, you know, I had to seek out a church home when I moved away. Like, I had to really like build that relationship for myself. On top of all of that, I ended up starting at a new university. I went to the University of Central Florida to receive my bachelor's degree, and I took a completely different path than what I thought I was taking. Like, it was a long story of me going on a college tour to USF, where I thought I was going to be studying computer science, only to be like turned around with the notion that like the lady couldn't tell me what kind of job I could get. She didn't tell me what kind of courses I could take. So I just was like so beat down that I'm like, I'm not going to USF, I'm going to UCF. And I thought I was going to be studying communications because the classes that I had already taken at my state college would have just aligned with the major. Turns out that I ended up registering for an entirely different major. So not communications as in communications. I registered for communication sciences and disorders, which actually led me to the career that I am actually pursuing today. So 21, 22, and 23, they all kind of clump up. The only difference or transition that I actually went through between those 3 years of 21 to 23, I actually started going out more, and I got into the dating world, which was not really that big of a deal because there were no dates happening. I just learned how to dodge a few bullets along the way. 24 was eventful, but I want to tell you guys the meat and potato of why we are talking about a quarter life crisis, right? So 24 happened. I ended up graduating from university with my bachelor's degree, and I can't skip 24 because that was a pivotal moment too for me. So somewhere along the line, I ended up working at a sports store, right? So this is significant because it kind of led me into the path of where I am now. So I ended up getting fired from my job for the first time in my life. I had never been fired before, right? So I got fired from my job, and literally the next day I ended up getting a job at this car dealership where my best friend, who was also my roommate at the time, she was working at the time, right? So that was a whole different story. I could tell you guys about that story later because we are on the crisis. So I ended up losing a job. Like that was very like detrimental to me. Like, that was a point where I was just like, I've never been fired before. Like, how could they do this to me? Like, what they were accusing me of was not true. And long story short, like, God does everything for a reason. He saw that I was complacent and I wasn't trying to move my feet and I was so comfortable where I was. He was like, let me get you out of the door because I need you to be on a different path, right? So I ended up getting a job at a car dealership that didn't require me to do much, to the point where I used to bring my laptop in and play The Sims. I used to edit my resume. Ended up getting a call saying that somebody wanted me to come and interview for a SOPA position here in Tallahassee, Florida. At the time, I couldn't get my license in time. So I was just like, oh man, I missed out on that opportunity. But I went ahead and registered for the license anyway because I was like, what if another opportunity comes, right? I might get offered a job. So like a month or two later, I ended up getting a job offer from a lady in Gainesville, Florida. Now, let me just say, I have never been the one to think like, oh, Rashima, when you grow up, you're going to go live in Gainesville, Florida. I'm like, Gainesville? That's not the place for me. But I ended up getting the job. I ended up moving to Gainesville, where that's where the quarter life crisis really started. I need to get more comfortable to tell you guys this part of the story, right? So when I was in Gainesville, let me just back up a little bit, because some of you guys don't know my past to know that I grew up what I thought I was having a good life, but I didn't know that I came from poverty until I saw poverty and it was labeled poverty. So like, it came into my conscious as, oh, Rashima, you grew up without a lot of things, right? But I was never needing for much. I was at a point in life where I was making money, more money than I had ever made in my entire life. I was able to give myself the desires of my heart. So anything that I wanted, I was able to get for myself. It wasn't like I was making buku cash, but it was more money than I had ever touched. So I was in a new place. I had a new job. I was able to give myself all these things. I got my first car before I moved there. And I was the unhappiest that I had ever been. Like, could you imagine being able to give yourself all the desires of your heart, and that is the point in your life where you are the worst? Gainesville is where everything started to set in. Like, that is where I think I experienced adult depression. Like, I wasn't clinically diagnosed as depressed, but going through that season and then coming out of it, I really noticed that, like, wow, Rashima, like, you were not happy. Like, you were semi-depressed. Like, I really feel like I was depressed then. So my quarter life crisis consisted of me trying to be this perfect person for everybody else but myself, right? Because we get so caught up on what our family thinks, what our friends think, what society thinks of us if we are not doing what we feel like we were called to do, or if we said that we were going to do something and we're not doing it. Like, I was caught into that, like, oh my gosh, I have to do this thing because I said I would do this thing, and if I don't do this thing, then everybody else who knew I was doing this thing is gonna judge me, and I didn't feel like I wanted to be judged. So your girl was out here just living life for other people, and I had to learn that that was not for me, and it's not for you either. So if you guys are in a place where you feel like you are going through a quarter life crisis because you don't know if the choices that you've made are going to lead you down the right path, well, life is all about choices. Like, you have to make choices whether they are going to end you, like, they're going to lead you to a good place or a bad place. Like, regardless of the place that you end up, it's all to learn a lesson, because everybody's life is different, everybody's story is different. I wish that I could have had a career where I did not need an education for. Like, I am not good with my hands. I cannot do hair. I can only do makeup on myself, and I don't even have on makeup today. I am not that good with my hands unless it's building something. And back then I didn't even know, like, I didn't in my head know that there were trades for people like me, right? So although I had experience going to different trade schools where I got to compete for stuff, like, I had no idea what to do, like, as a child. Like, what are the different careers? Like, I didn't see that many careers. There are people in my family who went to the military. There are people who chose academia, but they chose academia later in life. So I just was, like, confused. Like, nobody ever talked to me about that. Like, I had one constant person in my life, which was my pastor, who actually talked to me about, like, you got to make it to college. You got to make it to college and do this, this, and this. Like, but my struggle came after college, because, oh, I got the degree. Now what do I do with myself? Like, what is the end goal? Like, we are always thinking of what is to come. Like, what do we have to do next? And I was in a place where I was complacent. Is that even the, I don't even know if that's the word that I want to use, but, like, I was just in a space where I was alone. I, like, didn't have anybody, and my friends look at that time period now, they're like, Rashima, like, you were always around us. Like, I would travel all the time to go back and forth to Orlando from Gainesville because I wasn't happy where I was. Like, if I was happy where I was, I would not be driving to Orlando every other weekend, right? So fast forward, I ended up getting into graduate school, which is where I am now. I currently live in Tallahassee, Florida, and don't think that the trouble stopped there, because now your girl is 26 and the stuff just keeps coming. And that's why I say the quarter life crisis must last you until you are out of your 20s. It must go from, like, 18 to 28. I think I saw that somewhere. So 28, be a good year to me. 27 is this year that's coming. So, ooh, like, there's so much more that piles on to my quarter life crisis, but I don't want to make this video too long. If you guys think that you have experienced a quarter life crisis, leave a comment below and tell me what are some specific things that happened to you in your life that made you feel like, oh my gosh, like, I shouldn't be having to go through stuff like this at this age, or like, oh my gosh, I'm not where I'm supposed to be, and I hope that all the decisions that I've made in my life will lead me to where I actually want to be. I have a plan and where I want my life to be, believe it or not. Like, I want to go somewhere far, but all these little minuscule things are preventing me from getting there in the time that I want to, right? So the crisis is coming in from an emotional crisis of identity and self-confidence that can occur basically at any stage in life. So I am basically having a self-confidence and identity crisis because my confidence is not low, but if you guys have been watching my videos, then you know that I've been going through something that kind of did take a hit to my self-confidence. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link it up here in the card so that you guys can go back and watch it. And so you'll know why I feel so strongly that I'm having this quarter life crisis, right? So like I said, if you have experienced a quarter life crisis, let me know your story or just a piece of your journey down in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that bell notification icon so that you can get a notification the next time your girl posts another video. All right, so I'm gonna make this easy for you because I know you guys like listening to me because you watch all my videos, right? So I'm gonna leave a video right here and you will see me in the next video. See you guys later.